Hey, everybody. Good Wednesday evening to all of you, or maybe early afternoon, or maybe it's already Thursday. I don't know, just depending on where you are. I just want to say thank you for joining us today for this great show. Thank you so much also for all of your support. Everybody that watches the show, listens to the show, catches the replays. I really appreciate what you do. And hopefully, we're doing something wonderful to help you, just either brighten up your day, learn something new, or just actually just connect with other wonderful educators and wonderful creators that are like-minded that maybe someday you can collaborate with. Because as you know, that's what we do: connect educators and creators one show at a time. And today, I'm just really thrilled to have my great friend Natalie. And even though we've only really we worked or collaborated at one time, it was just so cool. Like we just coincided on so many things and everything.
Absolutely.
So it's so cool to have you on the show today. So Natalie, how are you doing today?
I am awesome. It's Wednesday, so I am like, woohoo, we're
Hey, there you go.
60%, right?
Midweek. It's almost
Yeah,
Friday. So I'm just
we're
really
getting
excited. So,
there.
Natalie,
Mhm.
for our audience members, and anybody that's going to be listening, those that may not know who you may be, please introduce
Yeah.
yourself and let us know your context in education.
Sure. So my name is Natalie Conway. I live in Oregon and I am an online special education teacher. And I've been doing that for a while now. So since 2014, I'm also an instructional coach for SYS education. And so I help train and support online educators in developing their own curriculum and improving their practice as online educators. So that's where I'm at currently. I originally started in Massachusetts, that's where I'm from, so Bostonian at heart here, and I started teaching in 2005 and did special ed in brick and mortar public schools. Then I taught 3rd grade for a couple of years before moving out to Oregon with my husband, and we've been loving the West Coast ever since, and I just the West Coast and the East Coast, if anyone listening or watching has ever taught on both coasts, it is 2 different worlds, and I ended up kinda stumbling into online teaching once out here and never gone back.
Wow. So wait a
I
minute,
know.
Natalie, you said you've been online teaching since
Mhm,
2014. So wait a
mhm.
minute, there's been online teaching before COVID?
Right?
Oh,
There were actual schools dedicated to it.
whoa,
Yeah.
wait a minute. So yeah, so we'll get to that in a little bit. So that's something that still kind of blows my mind. I was like 24 or yeah,
Yeah.
2014 online schools. That's just novel to me. I thought everybody
Right?
was just brick and mortar and so on. So you moved from the East Coast to the
Mhm.
West Coast. Um, but you did start your teaching career in the East Coast, you mentioned?
Yeah. Yep, right out
Okay.
of college.
Oh, okay, right out of college. So that's good. That kind of leads me to my question. I'm always curious, all our guests that show up and are here. I just, and our educators. I want to know just maybe a little bit as far as your background in education. Was there a particular moment, maybe a particular teacher, a particular experience,
Mm.
something that kind of just sparked that interest in education?
Oh my gosh, I have always loved school. I'm still going to school. You can't stop me from going to school for some reason. I have known ever since I was a little kid that I was going to be a teacher. That was what I chose to play with my stuffed animals, and I'll always just I loved reading, I loved playing school, I loved being at school. Um, it was not necessarily always easy for me. I was a really hardworking student. I still am. But I worked really hard all the time, and the grades mattered to me for sure. I was a bit one of our high school teachers would have called me a grade grubber. Like I would always wanted I wanted to do well. Like if there was a standard, I wanted to meet or exceed it. But as I've gotten older, I've realized, that's not quite the goal of education. But I've always loved it. I had a really wonderful 5th grade teacher who I remember telling me that I should be a nurse when I grow up because, you'd make a really good nurse. And I hate needles and blood. anything that probably a nurse has to do on a daily basis. So I said, "No, I don't think so, but I want to be a teacher," and I've always wanted that. When I went to college, went to Providence College in Rhode Island, and their undergrad program is a dual license program. So you come out after 4 years, you come out with your license in elementary and special education. And I wasn't initially interested in special education. It scared me. It totally
Mhm.
intimidated me. It's just, if you think about, "Oh, I wanna become a teacher. I wanna teach elementary school," maybe in your head, you're like, "I really wanna do 1st grade, but if I get 3rd, I can figure that out," or something like that. You're okay with it, but, special ed is just such its own world and a totally different animal, and there's always more to learn, and I think when I was first starting out, I just realized I knew how much I didn't know. I knew that I didn't even know what I don't know kind of thing, and it was intimidating, but all of my job offers were for special ed. So, there's a lot of elementary ed teachers out there, and there's not as many special ed teachers. So I wouldn't say I was reluctant because I was still excited about the opportunity, and I really love working with kids. And so starting out in special ed was just a little bit of an unexpected or unanticipated beginning, but one that then I never really veered from. I taught 3rd grade for a couple of years before we left Massachusetts, and I had done so much co-teaching, and I had so many ideas for curriculum and classroom instruction that the year came where a handful of our teachers retired. I just went to my principal like, "Please, please, please, can I have my own classroom?" I was like, "You can give me all the kids with IEPs. That'd be fine." Like, I could be the inclusion class, but which they didn't do. I don't think that's even legal to do, but they they did it. And it was really, really fun. But ever since then, we moved to Oregon, and I've just been back in special ed, and I love it. I love the problem solving. I love the level you get to communicate with and get to know families and kids. And, you have your caseload. Usually a caseload's around 30 or so students. So as many as maybe you'd have as a general ed teacher in elementary. But you just get to know so much more about their whole lives and their whole selves as a person, not just necessarily as a student. But so yeah, that's kind of where I came from and how I got here.
Wow. So, I mean, I love just hearing you speak and just going into just you describing your enthusiasm and so on. I'm like, man, I want to be in your class. Like, I want you to be my teacher because you just seem like you're just yeah, so cool. And I think one thing that I loved was that you mentioned is getting to know your students, building those
Yeah,
relationships. So, I mean, I'm sure that obviously that is very important if you are just in brick and mortar. Obviously, it's very
totally.
important. It doesn't matter which type of student you may have, but that
Mhm.
relationship component is definitely something that really helps at the very beginning. Once you establish, that relationship with your students and then with your
Yeah.
parents. So now you mentioned you have 30 students. Is that correct? When you said
Yeah, right
case,
now I
okay,
don't have that many, 20 something.
20 something students, and they
Yeah.
are all special ed students.
Yes. Yeah, this year I'm case managing kindergarten through 3rd grade. So
Wow.
I think I have 24, 26 right now.
24 and 26 students. And now, so
Yeah.
let's go back to again, 2014. You've been teaching online. Wait a minute. So online existed prior to
Yeah.
COVID. And to
Mhm.
top it off, you've been doing special ed
Yeah.
online.
I
Okay.
know. People's minds are
So
like, "Wait, what?"
yeah, yeah, and right now, and when I first heard that, when I got to meet you and know who you were and everything, I'm like, wow, that's really amazing that you're doing this online. So,
Mhm.
just tell us a little bit about that experience. And right now, like you mentioned, your caseload is kinder through 3rd grade. So,
Mhm.
what is a day in Natalie's life? Well, let's say this, walk us through maybe just beginning of school year. Walk us through
Oh
what Natalie
gosh.
goes through beginning of school year, just so people can understand a little bit. Because I
Yeah,
mean,
totally.
I'm thinking like special ed. I know um, online learning is new for a lot of teachers, and I know that there's
Yeah.
populations that really might have not gotten service the way that they should have. But we can. I don't want to say we can blame all our teachers, because this was something that was just new, and like, wow, you're used to
Oh
having
my
the
gosh,
students
yeah.
face to face, but you have been doing this for a long time. So how do you get that to work?
Yeah.
What's the magic?
Oh, man, I wish there was a magic bullet or something. It is just so much effort and communication. The start of the school year is a paperwork nightmare. That's basically what that is. Anyone who teaches special ed or, works closely with a special educator knows that they're in meetings and just doing paperwork a lot of the time. So that's part of it, especially working in an online charter. So being a school of choice, kids choose to come and kids choose to go. So we get some turnover. During COVID, we got little to no turnover, which was great. So we were able to keep our kids. My caseload stayed very stable. There are some years, your caseload might hover around 28 or 30 kids, but there's been 10 or 15 who have come and gone. And for various reasons. I mean, the online world isn't for everybody. And I think we realized that with COVID too, that there are some students for whom that's not going to be the most successful avenue for them to access education. But for a lot of kids it is. And typical kind of day for me or week is working with small groups and then also co-teaching. So a lot of kids, and I think this is a lesson that we can all learn, brick and mortar or online. A lot of our kids with IEPs, they don't need to be segregated from their peers. They don't need a separate class. They don't need necessarily one-on-one instruction or an aide or any of that. They need to be included in a class where there are accommodations happening, where maybe something's modified for them, and where people have thought ahead of time. They've taken maybe that universal design for learning framework and they've implemented that within their lessons or their assessments prior. So that kind of thinking beforehand, that pre-planning and collaborating with special ed and general ed teachers together. So some days I am co-teaching. So it's two of us in a Zoom session with a class of kids, and we either are bouncing back and forth, like just sharing the slide deck and teaching together with all the students, or sometimes we'll do breakout rooms. Sometimes we can do stations. So we'll have two breakout rooms in the main room, and then we'll rotate through those three. So we kind of do it different ways depending on the class and then depending on what we're trying to accomplish. And then I also have small groups that I teach on my own. I do reading groups, and that is a total blast. I love it. Those are smaller groups of kids, and they're not necessarily kids all with IEPs, but sometimes I'm teaching the gifted and talented learners. Sometimes I'm teaching the kids who are struggling to keep up with the grade level expectations, and it's fantastic. It's really, really fun. And yeah, like I said before, it is a lot of communication. I guess that is maybe the magic behind it, is that you have to be in constant communication and partnership with the families. So, if I'm not seeing a student in class or I'm not seeing them perform like they usually do, then the onus is on me to reach out to the parent, to email, to call, whatever it might be, and say, "Hey, what's going on? I haven't seen, your student in class, or things don't seem to be how they were before." And you just being online, I think the other thing we've all noticed this year is that you really get a glimpse into the students' home lives that you'd never
Mm.
maybe would have seen before. And that can be kind of a double-edged sword. We want to be really respectful of people's privacy and what isn't necessarily our business, but then also it it provides you more context for how kids are doing and where they're at and where their families are at as well.
Wow. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, that is wow. Like I'm like in awe of what you've been able to do and your experience. And like you said, you know, even stations and doing all of those things. I think that's just
Yeah.
amazing, and just you just seem so cool, calm, collected, like, like I've got this. And of course, we know that in education it's not always like that, but I think it's just you
No.
just have to, like I always say, my favorite three words are improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I think if
Absolutely.
you can do those, I think that you're going to be pretty well off, in online education or not in online
Yes.
education. But I like some of the things that you highlighted, and I know that. I mean, I know it's been a year and a half for a lot of teachers. And I know it's been
Yeah.
a very tough year. A lot of students just, being absent online, or,
Mhm.
just like you said, some are thriving because they just, are okay with, hey, I got my assignment. Let me get everything done. I'm good to go.
Yes.
But then you also have the other side where not online is not for every student too as well. They don't
Mhm.
they may not get the learning that they need, or obtain it in that matter.
Right.
um, but I think in the end, like, it all comes down, like, and you kept mentioning, just building that rapport, building those relationships, understanding, where the student is
Yeah.
coming from. And I think that has opened up, like you said, a new lens for a lot of teachers in this year and a half, because like you said, brick and mortar, I would see my students come into the classroom and I would see them for those 6.5, 7 hours while they were there. We were doing code club and so on. But you don't
Yeah.
see what happens at home, what may be going on, all that extra stuff, other than maybe a couple of days when you kind of just see them maybe not being so happy, things of that sort. But I
Right.
think it gives you, like you said, context in where they're coming from, how to,
Huge.
yeah, how to personalize, maybe the learning, just being able to talk to them, showing empathy and things of that sort. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that that's something that, now when we go back, it's something that we don't forget, that we can definitely keep working with that.
Yes, that there are just so many ways for a kid to access whatever it is you're trying to do with them or teach, like, I'll often use, Pear Deck
Mhm.
in my live classes 'cause the kids love it, especially my kindergartners think it's just super fun, but then I know there are some kids who aren't, there with an adult. There isn't a big person, I say. I'm like, "Is there a big person who could help you click on that link in the chat?" And, like, that physical step is really hard for a kindergartner or even a first grader sometimes. So, I'm always like, "Oh, if you're not in the Pear Deck, no worries. Just get your whiteboard out or even just point to the screen," whatever it might be. So, I'm trying to always give them not necessarily an out, but, like, here are 3 different ways you can still be 100% participating in this. You can type it to me in the chat. You can do whatever. So, I think as long as we keep that in mind, especially for people who are online this year and are gonna transition back to brick and mortar, like, yeah, how can I change things up in that setting so that I'm making things more comfortable for all my students? I'm making it so that they all can access whatever it is I'm trying to do. Because it's not like I'm not trying to teach them Pear Deck, I'm trying to teach them initial sounds and CVC words, So,
Right.
however they do that, I don't care. It's the skill, not the vehicle.
There you Ooh, I like that. It's the
Yeah,
skill,
right?
not the vehicle. And
Say that.
oftentimes we tend to focus a lot more on the vehicle. It's
Mhm.
like, recently I think I was reading a short article one of my friends shared with me. She was a guest on the show, Shannon Moore. So shout out to Shannon if you're watching. But she shared a short little kind of clip on kind of like the law of subtraction, where I think oftentimes, maybe even during online and during this change in pandemic, we were just piling things on and on and on and on.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you kind of have to step back and look back and see, okay, well, what are some things that we can remove? Like maybe some of those obstacles, because sometimes those vehicles, or having a garage packed of vehicles, like can be,
Yes.
not a great thing oftentimes, and like you said, we lose the focus on the skill, and we're more worried about the vehicle and how shiny it is. And then the new model comes out and you're like, hey, well, I want that one now. And now it's another learning process for the students.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
now with you, like, and this is where you and I coincided when we were doing that that session, that panel. It's just
Yeah.
keeping it simple,
Oh my gosh.
right?
So simple. Pick something and stick with it,
Mhm.
like, just go with that. Don't do all the things. I mean, there's so much now, especially since remote learning became a thing. I mean, companies have just made so many products, and not that any of them are bad, they're not. It's just you have to ask yourself why. Why am I going to use this? What purpose does it serve, or does it serve me a purpose? And is there something else that I could use that's better? I mean, like, even in my own outside of school life, we have in the house, those Alexas, you can just talk
Mhm.
to the I forget what they're actually called, from Amazon, and we'll play music on it, and a song will come on and I won't know who the artist is, and so I'll say, "Hey Alexa, who is this?" And it pauses the song and stops it, and then you hear it, and sometimes the we call it the robot. The robot doesn't know what you said, and it says something, and you're like, just forget it." And then it just jogged my memory, and I'm like, "Oh, I had that app Shazam like 5 years ago. I'm just gonna put Shazam back on my phone, and I don't have to interrupt the robot." So it's like, okay, you don't need Shazam and this and that, like, but just find what works for you, find what
Mm.
is helpful and, the easiest thing, and just stick with that. It's not that any of the other things are bad, it's just that less is absolutely more. And like you said too, on the parent family side, especially with technology, you just have to
Yeah.
consider that, like, there's got to be an adult on the other end who's learning this in reality, right? If you're not a high school student, then chances are there's an adult there who's facilitating this. And so,
Yeah, there you go. And that's a great point there also. So that's really, all great points to consider. And I know, slowly, things students are coming back and at least here in Texas, at least what the feeling is that the start of the school year should everybody will probably be back face to face. So that's something that'll be definitely interesting. And I mean, a lot of us are definitely looking forward. I mean, walking to some schools or walking the schools and not seeing students just walking next to each other and having fun and laughing and being in class. I know for myself has been like, wow, it's been very difficult, but it's also been a learning experience. And like you said, being able to learn a new practice, be able to be more considerate of things. So I'm really enjoyed that aspect of that learning process. And now for yourself, let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned this year you're doing a little bit more of the instructional coaching, and this is sort of a new role for you. So talk to us a little bit about that. How has that been going for you? I think I lost your audio, my friend. Let me see here. No worries. It's all good, my friend. No, not yet. Mm-mm, mm-mm. It's all good, my friend. I don't know what may have happened, but I did lose your audio. I don't
you
know.
can,
I know you. Okay, I'm slowly getting you back. Let's see here. I kind of faintly heard you for a little bit. There we go. There we go. Let's see. Go
yeah.
ahead. Now I can hear you. We're good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, we're good.
Oh, live.
Yeah.
This is
Hey, it's like, hey,
stressful.
that's hey, it's a live show. And I always tell people, hey, this is live. It's what you see is what you get, and you'll hear it in the podcast too. So it's all
I
good.
love it. I love it. Now I
No,
forget what
but
you just asked me.
oh no, no worries, my friend. It's all good. I had asked, this year, like you said, you kind of got a new role, now doing the
Oh,
instructional
yes.
coaching. So tell us how that went for you this year.
Yes, that's really exciting. So I was joking that, like all teachers, I have 2 jobs. So I have my teaching job, and then, I have this separate job where I have a podcast and I do instructional coaching for SYS Education, and I've loved that this year. So instructional coaching was a new role for me, and I, did it with another one of my coworkers, Ashley White. She's a super talented high school English teacher and mentor teacher. And we've worked together for a handful of years now. And so we both took on this instructional coaching role. And we're working with the largest online school in the state of Oregon. So it is enormous. And we're trying to support their teacher leaders. So not necessarily admin or anything like that, but they're teachers who are in leadership roles or mentoring roles. And we started instructional coaching on a voluntary basis with them, which was something we both thought was really important, that teachers would volunteer to do it, that it would be something they choose and not something that anyone's making them do. And so it looked so different depending on the teacher, which was really neat to observe and participate in throughout the year because, again, it being my first year acting as a for real instructional coach, it was powerful for me to see that the same things we kind of preach about teaching and working with kids applies to working with adults as well. There isn't this one way to go about it that's going to work for everyone. So there There was a teacher who, wanted to meet every 4 weeks, lockstep, and work on her goals. And we kept everything written, and we had little sub goals, and, all of that. And it was very kind of like by the book feeling, but good and productive. And then there was another teacher, total other end of the spectrum, who was basically like, "You're on call for me. So when I need you, let's meet. And then otherwise, how about we don't?" Yeah, you're very busy, and that's fine. Like, let's do it however you want. And so it was really great that their school didn't necessarily mandate anything specific. It was all very, very voluntary, but it was really, really enriching for me to be able to help teachers with their pedagogical practice, and then also learning new skills or learning new terms. Like, some of them hadn't heard of universal design for learning, for instance, or the flipped classroom model was new to them. And so helping them work through that, and see them be vulnerable, and be able to just also unearth some biases or maybe some unconscious beliefs that we have about kids, or we have about situations, like, oh, this is a fifth grader reading at a second grade level. So, insert whatever belief you have there about that child. And okay, is that helping or hindering us from reaching this student? Is it, how is it impacting what you do, and how you do it? So that was really great. And it offered a mirror for me for my own practice as well, to be able to see, okay, what can I be doing different? I'm asking these people these tough questions, or these, kind of probing questions about their practice and their beliefs. I'm like, I need to be doing that for me too more often. So it was a good, really good experience. I hope the teachers I work with feel like it was as good an experience as I did. But again, it was just that relationship building and collaboration. I really feel like in any school, no matter where you are in the country, and no matter if you're online or brick and mortar, you have the capacity within that school, like the teachers, the skills, the drive, it's all there. It's just finding a way to bring it about, to water those seeds, and to watch it grow.
Oh, I love that. That's often something that I always use. It's that seed example, just plant
Yeah.
it and watch it grow. But I love, how you approached the situation, as far as teachers having obviously different teaching styles, but being able to meet them where they're at, be there, like you
Yes.
said, like you've got those at, hey, you're on call, like let me do what I got to do, and if I get into any trouble, like I'll call you.
Yeah.
And then those that are always willing to take any of the help at any time. And one thing that is very true, like you said, it's seeing teachers being vulnerable. For them, it's something that's not
Mhm.
easy if they're just not
No.
used to having somebody else see them in that vulnerable position. I think for myself, it's like I've always been vulnerable in front of my students. Like, it's like, oh man, I really messed that lesson up, and I'm cool. And my students were like, hey, I'm okay. Then they kind of like, hey, well, you are human. Like you're not just a robot.
Yeah.
Like you do feel things, Mr. Mendoza. Like you, I was like, yeah, of course. We all make mistakes, but I think
You
that's
have to
something
normalize
too.
that.
Exactly, and those are oftentimes, it's important, that it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel vulnerable, and there's absolutely it
Yeah.
does not make you any less of an educator, any less of a person. It's just a human emotion. It's a part of us, but being able to
Yeah.
have somebody to support you and help you work through those things, I mean, that's amazing, and so you were able
Yeah.
to build relationships, and that's amazing.
It was super cool. It's just, I really feel like, we all do better when we do it I know that sounds super corny, but like we do it better when we do it together. Like, I've always co-taught. I've always co-planned as a special ed teacher. And then when I was a general ed teacher, like there's just so much value in that. And I think it makes it okay for us to not know. It makes it okay for us to admit where we have a weak point, or and to share where we have a strength too. Like, oh, I'm super good at this. Let me take the reins on this one. Or, maybe one of your teachers is really the idea person. They come up with awesome projects or great ideas, but the nitty gritty and how do we, actually make this a reality? That's a challenge for them. And so having those partnerships, and leaning on one another, we preach 21st century skills so much, and collaboration is one of them. And it's like we have to really just keep doing that to ourselves. That's why I'm really lucky to have Ashley, the other instructional coach, with me, because when you have a situation with someone you're coaching and you're not sure how to approach it or what the next step is going to be, and to have someone to bounce ideas off of, like, I feel like the longer I'm in education, the more comfortable I get admitting when I don't know, or that I need help with something. And I think you start off, you kind of want to be like, I have the answers, I know how to do this, I'm trained, or whatever it is. It's just like there's always something new to learn, and there's always another part of your practice to develop. And so we're all on the journey.
Yeah, we definitely are, and that's the thing about education, and as educators, we never stop learning, and or
Nope.
actually, I don't want to say that, I know it sounds terrible, but sometimes you do run into some educators that are, like, this is it, like, I don't want to hear any new ideas. The mindset
Yeah.
is a fixed mindset, and I mean, we have all types of educators, and so it's just one of those
It's
things.
true.
But I know for myself, I know I'm always continually searching and looking for new ideas and new things because, and and I think you're right as far as an educator, being able to see things through a different lens and through a different perspective really helps you not grow professionally, grow
Mhm.
personally. But one thing that you mentioned is very important is we need to model those same skills to our students. We ask them, hey, you've got voice and choice, you've got this
Mm.
and that, but are we doing it ourselves as teachers? And you in brick and mortar, it's like we work in silos. We've got teachers, we
Yeah.
just work in silos. And I think one of my great friends who was a guest on the show, she's like, we need to understand that education is about collaboration and not competition. We need to make sure that
Yes.
we're rooting for one another. We want, in the end, we want our students to be successful, and that's really the main goal.
It is, in all arenas. You don't want the kid just to pass Algebra 1, you want them to do well in all their courses and be well-rounded and all of that, yeah.
Yeah, and just creating
There's
those experiences, the learning experiences is very important too as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you now. Like I want my audience members. I want them to know we've talked a little bit about your work, your background, and so on. But now let's just really get to know Natalie. Who is Natalie Conway? What
Who is
so
this
let's
chick?
yeah, who is she? So, I just want people to get to know you better. So,
Oh my gosh, yeah.
first of all, let me ask you this. Where do you draw your inspiration from? Whether
Mm.
it's in education or maybe if there's a hobby that you have, wh- who do you look up to? Or I don't know, maybe just, yeah, let us know. Where do
Yeah,
you draw your inspiration from?
I think all over the place, honestly. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I think in these past few years, she's really inspired me, in terms of my work and education, but then also just personally to be an example for her of, someone who's working towards goals and who's trying new things and who's doing things that are challenging. I always want her to see me as in that way, as someone who can do hard things and who will put herself first, when she needs to, that kind of thing. So I want her to grow up to be strong and confident and independent as well. So she's definitely been an inspiration. The outdoors. I love being outside. So I hiked part of the Pacific Crest Trail last summer. I did section hikes where you just, you go out for a weekend or a night or two, and did that on my own. And it was amazing. I made it from the California Oregon border to just north of Crater Lake National Park, if anyone knows where that is. And so that was super fun. And I want to keep doing that again this spring and summer. Just being outside, being in nature is really something that um, it's my time to really think and process a lot of things. You're just hiking on the trail or you're out camping and you just have nothing but nature and time. And I actually really like that, even an online teacher who's looking at screens all day. But um Absolutely, nature inspires me, and reading. I love to read. I'm always trying to read something new and different or learn something. Read for enjoyment too, once in a while. So,
There you go. Well,
yeah, I get a lot of inspiration, I guess.
I gotta ask this then. You mentioned reading, and
Mhm.
you have a self-imposed reading regimen. So let's talk a little bit about that. And how did it start?
I do.
How did this begin? So tell us a little bit of that.
Uh, I love reading. I absolutely love reading. And I got the Goodreads app years ago, and I had some friends on there, and you can do a reading challenge. So you basically it's like your New Year's resolution, but just about how many books you're gonna read. That's like the only kind of resolution I tend to keep. So yeah, my sister-in-law reads like a million books. She is one of those people who can read multiple books at the same time. Like she could pick up one book in the morning and then read a different one in the afternoon. If I do that, I have no clue what I've read. So I'm a one at a timer, but um, I started just exploring different authors and genres and seeing what my friends were reading or what was trending. And it's like, oh, I can read a book a month. This is great. Oh, I can read 2 books a month. So last year, I think I read, I don't know, 24 books or more. And so I set that goal again for this year that I would read about 2 books a month. And it's just a way to disconnect from work a little bit. When you teach online or when you work from home, as a lot of people have learned, it's hard to separate like, am I working right now? Am I doing something for pleasure? Because your email's on your phone or someone messaged you. Like it's just always there. And so to physically pick up a book or to pick up, like your Kindle or whatever it might be, like you're detaching from work. So that's definitely part of it for me. It's a way to just have some Natalie time and not be focused on other things, but just focus on something I want to read for me. And I've loved it because it's just I love reading. I love reading for pleasure. I love reading to learn, but just getting my hands on books.
There you go. Now, is there a particular genre that like a little bit more? Maybe particular author that you really
Oh,
enjoy their work?
my favorite book right now is Glennon Doyle's Untamed. That was just like that blew my mind, and I love it. I really like Brene Brown. Anything she writes, I will read.
There you go.
Yeah. So those two were really impactful for me last year. I read um, those two authors, but nonfiction has been the thing for me, which is funny because I feel like a few years ago, fiction. I was all about all fiction, anything fiction. I really like Marissa de los Santos. She's a cool writer. I don't know that she's super famous or anything, but she just wrote a series of books that I got hooked into and liked. And so in the past it's definitely been fiction, but now it's nonfiction and kind of that memoir sort of vibe, I guess, to some of the nonfiction books.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Now let's talk a little bit, like you did mention earlier, and I did pick up on this, where we talk about, as educators, you continue your education. Now you mentioned you're
Hmm.
still continuing your education. Are you
I
continuing
am.
tell us a little bit about that and that journey. What sparked you to just keep going?
I have no idea. I can't stop, I think. It's like
Right.
I think I'm just really curious. That's what it maybe comes down to. Like, my undergrad was elementary and special ed. So I already had that in Oregon, they call them endorsements. So I had my special ed endorsement when I got here. And um, then I was hanging out with the teacher friends who I made, and a lot of them had their reading endorsements. And I was like, oh, well, I wonder what's different about that. I'll go get that then. And so I got my reading endorsement last year. And I've been in teaching for 16 years. This is the end of my 16th year teaching, and I'm just so curious about administration now and
Oh,
what might be next. And so I'm getting my admin license, and I'm working on my master's in educational leadership now. So that has been really cool too, and just another window into education, seeing kind of the other side of the desk and what's happening that way. So I think it's really my curiosity that just keeps driving me forward. I just want to learn
yeah.
something. And so not that you need to get a degree necessarily to do that, but I think that's where it stems from. It's just my curiosity.
Yeah, I think that that's where you and I have I have two other friends that I joke around with them. One of them is Bonnie Chalette, who is awesome. She's from Louisiana, and then my friend Frederick Ballou, who's from Minnesota, and myself, and we kind of call ourselves the expensive paper club collectors
Oh my
because
gosh, yeah.
we just continue on. Like, you know, it's like one wasn't enough, and like now we're like, okay, now we've got our masters, and now, you know, I know Bonnie and I started our doctorates, and now Frederick, I know, is looking for a school to start enrolling in because he's like, why not? Like, and I think
Right?
it's just it just goes with, like you said, it's our curiosity. It's we want to grow. We want to, like, for myself, I want to see
Yeah.
things from all angles. I want to
Yes.
understand how I can do what I do and take it to the next level and elevate it. Not necessarily that, hey, I want to be an administrator, but I want to see
Right.
things at least through that administrative lens to see how I can help and maybe, you know, in those things. And yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot of it is just seeing things through a different perspective, a different lens, being well rounded and continuing
Yeah.
to grow in your position and see where that goes, you know? So, yeah.
Exactly. I always am asking why. That's
Yeah.
if anyone who's worked with me knows, like, "Oh, Natalie's gonna ask us why," or if we have asked the parent why yet, like and that's just a question I always am asking, and it comes from a place of curiosity. It doesn't come from a place of, like, "Why are you doing that?" It's, "Why are you doing that?" I'm just so curious, and I wanna know how everything works. I was never one of those kids who would, like,
Yes.
take apart the calculator or anything, but when it comes to a system, I'm like, "How does this work, and who does what, and where does that come from?" And yeah, so I think it's just kind of the next. Yeah, I have my master's in special ed, and now I'll get my master's in ed leadership, and I was just joking with one of my coworkers. She's like, "You'll get your doctorate next." I'm like, "Oh, no way." And then I'm like,
Yeah.
"Well, talk to me in a few years. I don't know." But,
Yeah.
like, as of right now, no, I don't wanna write any more papers.
Yeah, no, but I totally get you. Like, you know, it's well, actually, you know, since I have a business degree, and so I didn't go through the College of Education. So I
Mhm.
was just really good at math and had enough math credits that I was able to become a math teacher, and that's how
Awesome.
I fell in education. But I loved it so much, and like you said, I think it's just that curiosity, just the system, the curiosity, working with students. And I think a lot of it just comes from the marketing background and in learning how to sell your product. In this
Mm.
case, I was selling algebra, I was selling science, and you know, those subjects that I taught, you know, when I moved to elementary. And then now I was just like, I really like technology. So let me learn more about that. And now in this role, you know, coming into this role, I was the only person in the department that did not have a master's degree in curriculum, like, you know, in the curriculum department.
Yeah.
So when they asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, well, I'm going to get my master's. Well, I ended up getting my master's like probably, I think, what is it, like a year and a half in, you know, so I got my
Wow.
master's, but now it's like, but I want to know more.
Mhm.
Like I don't aspire to be like a superintendent or anything. I just aspire to know. And
Yes.
a lot of my friends are like, "That's crazy." I was like, "I know, but I just wanna know I wanna know things." And so,
Yes,
I was talking to my
absolutely.
wife. I just finished my first year in the doctoral program, and I told my wife, you know, I was, like, telling her, I was like, "I gotta start thinking what I'm gonna do after the doctor. Should I go for another one or," and then she's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah, like, cause I'm gonna be bored." Like, I don't know, like, this is what I've
I know.
always known, like, just continually learning, thinking, and so on. So, I told her, I
Yeah.
was like, "I'll think about it. Maybe I'll just go back and maybe get a second master, something online, you know, that'll won't
Yeah,
take up maybe too much time." And so
there you
I told
go.
her, I was like, maybe I'll get my MBA, you know, and that'll kind of, you know, make my business degree kind of worth it, I guess, or something like that. I don't
That's so
know.
funny. Yeah, you
But
just said
yeah.
I kinda wish higher education was more à la carte, like, you could just take classes without necessarily having to be in a
Yes.
program or something. Like,
Right.
my husband's really curious and likes to learn too, but that whole like I have to pick a track and then I have to take 10
Yeah.
classes in this thing is like meh to him, and I totally get that because it's like even with my ed leadership masters, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of, like this class was cool, but this class I'm not so. No,
Yeah.
I suppose they're all important, whatever,
Yeah, I
but
know. Like I totally get you. I'm like the same way. And then I was thinking to myself, like, because when I did my master's, it was 7 week modules. Like, I mean, 7 weeks you finished, and then now in the doctoral, it's like we're doing 15 weeks. I was like, what do you mean? Like, where we have to do 15 weeks of this? I was like, isn't there a way that you can just take all of that info and compress it down to 7 weeks? And if
mhm.
I was
Or
telling
can't I
my
demonstrate proficiency and we cannot do those
yeah,
things and move
and
on to something I don't know?
yeah, and then I was telling myself, I was like, if they would do that, man, I'd be getting like, I'd go pursue as many doctors as I can if they were all online for 7 week modules, because like you said, I get to pick and choose what I want to learn and things of that. So it's
Yeah,
anyway, I think we're
it'd be
we're just
cool.
we're cool that way. We just like to continue learning and stuff like that. And but
Very much.
yeah. All right. So, Miss Natalie, so what are here we go. This is the one question that I kind of shared with you a little bit of, but this is one of the ones here that I wanted to ask you. If Natalie Conway could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Oh, I think this is a good one. I think it would have to be my personal mantra, which is, "You can do more than you think you can." I actually printed it out. You know those, I forget what they're called, that they punch out the cards with the alphabet one at a time on
Oh,
them?
yes, yes. I
You
don't
know
know what
the
they're called, but I remember what I
you
know
know
what they're
those
yeah.
things? Like, they're really
Yeah.
heavy, and yeah. I did that for "You can do more than you think you can," and we wrote it on the wall in my classroom, and I think that would be my billboard because I think everyone needs to hear that. Adults, kids, we all can do more than we think, and maybe COVID taught us that in terms of education, like, "Hey, we can do some of this online, or we can totally change the curriculum and make this something that actually is meaningful for us," or, whatever it might have been, but, um, that's one that just keeps sticking with me. I originally used it when I was training for a half marathon. I've only run, like, 1
Ooh.
or 2 of those, yeah, so not don't get too
Oh
impressed, but,
man. Don't
yeah, but that's like, you can do Glennon Doyle or Brené Brown, one of them says, "We can do hard things," and, I just feel like, we can do more than we think we can, totally, so
yeah.
that's what would be on that, inspiring us all.
Yeah, and that's true. That's so good, and that's always so good. It's a wonderful reminder on the daily for all of us. And
Yeah.
again, oftentimes, it's amazing. I was having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and I was because we're big math guys, and we're watching. I was watching a YouTube video on Joe Bowler, and she said, one of the things is pretty much that, like, you can do more than you think you can. And she gave an example of how even sometimes, when somebody says something, I mean, you kind of get that imposter syndrome and you're like, no, I can't, or I can't do it as well as they can, or they said I can't. Well, she mentioned where she had an experience where she walked into a classroom, and the parent, or excuse me, the teacher asked, does anybody have any questions? She rose her hand up, and the the teacher said, I can't believe you don't understand that. And she said from
Mm.
that moment on, she never asked a question in that classroom, never spoke in that classroom. And it was a math classroom. And now, like, I mean,
Oh,
she's one of the elite math, gurus that are out there and being able to teach.
yeah,
But she went ahead and talked about that. She said, hey, you can do more than you think you can. And oftentimes, we just need that reminder because sometimes things like that happen, but I love it.
absolutely.
Yeah, mine would definitely be my favorite 3 words: improvise, adapt, and overcome. That
Oh,
would definitely be on my billboard. And I think that that's something that, you know, in addition to that, it's learning those 3 things too can definitely help you accomplish more than you think, so
totally,
yeah.
yeah.
So I
We can
love
always
it.
push beyond our limit. We have this perceived limit, whether it's
Mhm.
physical activity in our physical bodies or mentally or emotionally even, like, there's just always this limit we impose on ourselves for maybe some evolutionary reason, I don't know, but, it's like
Yeah,
we can push past that, and you just
for
have to do
sure.
it enough times, I think, to realize, like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
unlimited.
There
Yeah.
you go. Unlimited. Yeah, actually, Dr. Brendan Beck, he has a book called Unlocking Unlimited Potential. And I mean, yeah,
I'll
sometimes
add
we
it.
we we do limit ourselves. So it's like, hey, yeah. So definitely check him out. Brendan Beck, awesome, awesome guy, great author, and just great educator overall. Just wonderful. Now for the next question here, Ms. Natalie. Now, I know that you do have a podcast and you did mention that. And I did share the link to the website where they can hear your podcast as well.
Thank you.
But for this time, if you and I were to switch roles right now,
Mm.
all right, what would you like to ask me?
Oh, I would like to ask you, what is it that you have learned in the last 5 years or so that you think is gonna carry you in the next, like, 10 years? What's the thing you've learned maybe in recent history that's gonna propel you forward?
Oh, recent history that's going to propel me forward. That is a great question. I always have to.
That's a
It is
tough
a great
one.
question, but actually, I would just have to say that what really pushes me and has pushed me this far along is just my passion that I have for
Mm,
education. So I know that at least in the next 10 years, I'm still going to be doing education in some way, shape, or form. But I think that that is what drives me each and every day. The more I learn, the the better that, well, more than anything, I do a self check and say, okay, what can I change in myself to provide a better service to our teachers, to provide a
mm,
better service for our curriculum department and do what I can for that job, but also how can that impact in a greater way? And that's what drives me. I want to see what I can do, whether it's through this podcast and connecting
mhm,
educators one show at a time and but making a difference in education. That's what drives me. I think like in 10 years from now, I'm still probably going to be this enthusiastic about education because it's something that is continually growing, continually evolving, and we're learning continually how to make it better. And I think that that drives me. I want to be one of those people that can be seen maybe as not necessarily like in the front lines change agent, but like that cheerleader to say, yes, we can do it. You can do it. We can all do it.
mhm.
And let's just bring our collective minds together and just put
Yeah.
education on its head and turn it upside down, flip it right side up and turn it inside out and all that good
Yeah,
stuff and just make it better. And right now, like that's really the passion that I have for what I do and what really pushes me to continue moving forward. Like I said, these papers and everything, it's just me continually learning and learning and
yeah,
learning because it's not just to better myself, but to better those around me. And that's what drives
absolutely.
me. So that's so awesome. I
Yeah.
love it. That's a great
I like
question.
that. Well, your passion's very evident too. I feel like that's how I know I connect with teachers or educators. I think it's that passion underneath. That's why. It's like that's the thread.
That's
Once
the
that's gone,
thread.
you gotta go somewhere else. There's
Yeah,
other things
yeah.
to do.
Hey, it's Lainey. There we go. Hi, welcome,
Yay!
Lainey. Oh, no worries. Don't worry. You can listen back to the recording. Natalie's awesome. I'm pretty sure that you already knew that. So it's all good. So let's talk a little bit more here. Like, what's next for Natalie Conway?
Oh, it's so exciting. Who knows? I I'm gonna continue with the podcast, which is really exciting. That was a total labor of love. It's our little adventures in online education podcast. So we'll have season 2 of that. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm gonna continue working on my master's in ed leadership. I'm gonna keep instructional coaching and yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what my role in education will be in the coming years, but I'm always gonna be in education. So
Oh,
that's totally it. It's my passion working with teachers, helping teachers do a better job helping myself continue
Yeah.
to learn and get better. So I'm
That
not leaving education, that's for sure.
that's great. And no, don't we need more Natalie Conways in education. We just need those amazing
It's a blast.
hearts, amazing servant leaders, amazing educators, and amazing, just passionate, educators like yourself. And that's awesome. And, and I did put the link into the webpage and so people can check out your
Thank
podcast. And
you. Thank you.
you know what? I just want to say, I love your art, for the podcasts. I
Isn't
love
that
the way.
cool?
Yes, I love it totally. Like when I went on there, I was like, this is so cool. And then, but in my mind, I was like, yeah, like that's so Natalie. Like it just really fits you. Like it goes so well. Like I just by seeing the page, I was like, yeah, like that's Natalie. Like, even though
Oh,
we
that's
only
so
met
good to
once on that
hear.
panel, but it's just so great, the guests that you have, the content that you have. So
Thank
I'm definitely
you.
excited and looking forward to season 2 of your
Yeah. I want
podcast.
you to
And
be on season 2.
hey, there you go. There you go. Connecting educators. There we go. All right.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that'll be awesome. It would be a huge pleasure and definitely an honor to collaborate with you on a podcast any day or collaborate on any project for that matter. So I think we
That'd be super
definitely
fun.
see eye to eye on a lot of things, and
Heck yeah.
that would be great. So again, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate just the
This was super fun.
wonderful conversation that we had. Just so it filled my bucket. I am so definitely pumped right now because it was just a great conversation of how
Absolutely.
you've been able to do what you do online, and especially working with special ed students, and some of the things that you shared, moving on to your instructional role, but in getting to know you a lot more, getting to know who Natalie Conway is outside of work, and what
Yeah.
drives you and your passions. And it's so great. Thank you so much just for this
Mhm.
wholesome conversation. And I'm probably looking forward to listening to this again because it's so cool.
Yay, me too. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure
Yes.
getting to know you better and being able to I love talking about education, and any day of the week I will do this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening, guys. Thank you though for those of you that joined us. Thank you, Lainey. I really appreciate it. Oh, let me see. She says here, you two are inspirational. You are both learning out loud and sharing so much. Oh my goodness, Lainey, thank you so much. I
That's
know
very kind.
we've never met or really like connected, like maybe like virtually, but I follow your stuff and I love it. Keep doing what you're doing. You are amazing. But so it really means a lot that you were able to you actually stopped by this show. So it's
I
so cool.
know.
So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Lainey. And for all of you that are watching, those of you that may be watching this later on the replay, thank you so much again for making my EdTech life what it is today. As you can see, it's just genuine, wholesome talk, getting to know one another, connecting educators and creators one show at a time. So if you can please do me a favor, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like, subscribe to our channel. You can also check us out at myedtech.life, where you will find this episode up shortly within about 25 minutes. You can check out the replay. You'll be able to check out the YouTube channel there. Give us a review, guys. I'm always looking for ways to definitely better my practice and bring you guys the best of me each and every Wednesday and Saturday. So drop us a line, give us a review there on our page, or you can contact us directly, and we'd love to hear from you. Any feedback, we'll take it. Again,
Mhm.
I'm always willing to learn, and I want to know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and we'll make it happen. All right, guys. So thank you so much for your time. And Natalie, I hope to collaborate with you soon again. You take care. Have a wonderful evening. Bye,
Absolutely, you
y'all.
too. Bye.